Howdy y'all. So I'm actually here at the Lost Colony Theater. Really cool amphitheater. Unfortunately, as I've said, I still haven't caught the show. Maybe next time I come down I'll actually catch the production, because it's supposed to be really good, really entertaining. Hopefully some of you have caught my last couple ranger presentations. The very last one was on Freedmen in Roanoke after the Battle of Roanoke Island. It was very a great presentation. I stopped and chatted with good Ranger Mike. I forget his last name. It was kind of unusual for a good 20 minutes or so after his presentation, and it's very enlightening. The guy is certainly very knowledgeable about the Civil War in many regards, not just North Carolina. But I just wanted to go over some general aspects of the Carolinas, especially coastal Carolina during the Civil War. Because I love this area. I think it's a great coastal area. I think it's a great state, and it just didn't make a big splash in the history books. But I think it was relatively important in strategic terms. So we can start off with the first invasion, which happened actually in the summer of '61. Again, this didn't make big headlines, but I think it was a relatively significant affair. So on August 25th, none other than Benjamin Butler, the bombardier of Baltimore, was the one who made the first inroads in coastal Carolina. He actually made the first invasion, and his target was Cape Hatteras and some naval forts in that area. Butler encountered very little resistance. He came down, well, he left on August 25th, I believe, made it down here in about 2 days. Now, Butler really lucked out with the weather. He came in the summer and he didn't encounter any big storms, keep that in mind. But it was a relatively bloodless affair as far as Civil War battles go. I think the Union lost 1 killed and a handful of wounded. The Confederates, let's just say about 13 killed, more wounded, and a good number taken as prisoner. So we can fast forward to the invasion of Roanoke Island. This didn't happen until very early in the year in 1862. And as I've mentioned, because I've been giving you guys a little bit of a teaser, it was, of course, General Burnside, Ambrose Burnside, who led the expedition and was summed up as the first successful amphibious invasion in U.S. history. So Burnside is tasked with making more inroads after what we could kind of describe as Butler's first foray. What Butler really did in his first in the first invasion on Hatteras was he was able to make practical, really old maps that existed at the time, because as many of you know, the Outer Banks are known as the graveyard of the Atlantic, and in particular, Oregon Inlet is where ships just go to die. There have been hundreds and hundreds of shipwrecks over the centuries around the Outer Banks. So the only maps that existed weren't terribly accurate, but more importantly, they didn't really contain any accurate information as far as channel markers, which were extremely of extreme importance. So after the summertime invasion of Hatteras in 1861, more support is slowly gained. What surprises me a lot is how neither side placed that much importance in either defending or assaulting the North Carolina coast. The Confederacy, it could be rationalized, wanted to sink more of their eggs, further up into Virginia, and really put a lot of concentration there. As far as the Union goes, it's a little more perplexing, because if you think about things strategically, and when you look at the map, the coastal Carolina area acts as a back door to Virginia. So, you would gain, of course, much easier access up to Roanoke, and via the railways also gain the have the ability to impede railway transportation of goods to Richmond. So in my opinion, they probably didn't jump on it soon enough. President Lincoln actually had to be kind of swayed into the idea, and eventually he was swayed with the notion that he might be able to turn some more of the coastal Carolinians in the Union favor, in addition to the military importances. And I'm not saying Lincoln was dumb, but that was kind of the thing that finally sold him on the idea. Winfield Scott was actually opposed to the idea because you know, with the Navy, the Union Navy at the time just was not very strong, and again, they probably felt it was more important to defend, you know, Washington and Baltimore and places like that. But Scott resigned on November the 1st, so that's when Burnside and McClellan really gained a lot of traction. McClellan was also an ardent supporter of attacking the North Carolina coast, and once Scott was out of the way, it was kind of, you know, all lights were green. So it took them a little time, of course, to get everything together. They eventually assembled ships up in Annapolis, so on and so forth. I think they probably departed as Butler did from Fort Monroe, which is near Norfolk. It was actually just across the bay in Hampton, Virginia. Let me see if I can get this straight. I think I don't remember the exact date. Burnside left in very early January. He actually got down here about January 13th, 1862. But unfortunately, like I mentioned, unlike Butler, he didn't have the luxury of coming in the summertime when things were relatively calm, and Burnside had to deal with two terrible winter storms off the coast. So these two winter storms actually kept them idling outside of the inlet and the Pamlico Sound for 13 days. So for 13 days, Burnside and his large flotilla and significant number of troops were stuck out there until January 26th. Once the storms finally subsided, much like the Cape Hatteras assault, there was relatively little resistance, again, because the Confederacy just did not. Now the funny thing is, they had the forts. They had lots of forts set up around Hatteras. They had lots of forts set up around the Sound and around Roanoke, but they just didn't place that much importance. Certain commanders down here in North Carolina were actually asking over and over from Confederate leadership, please send us some troops, please send us some men. We need to defend this coast. You know, we hear the Union's coming, and they were denied every time, and they were not sent troops and reinforcements. So Burnside pretty much had a pretty easy going of taking Roanoke Island as well. So there you have it, guys. I mean, there's a basic breakdown. I mean, that's not all of what happened down here. After Roanoke Island, Burnside continued. His objective was basically to take as many fortifications and military installations in the area as he could, but not to go. He was pretty strongly advised not to go too far inland. So after he took Roanoke Island, his next objective was let me see. So Roanoke Island was February 7th and 8th. I think it was 2 days later, on the February the 10th, when Burnside and co. Were able to overtake Elizabeth City. Again, the Confederates, you know, at this point, everybody knew they were in the area, and the Confederates just kept falling back and falling back and falling back. And I will kind of end this with New Bern. After Roanoke Island and Elizabeth City, Burnside was able to take New Bern, which was very strategic, and at that time, I believe, the second largest town in coastal Carolina. So there you have it, guys. There's a general rundown of Union assaults in the first couple years of the Civil War. It's been a great time down here. I hope you guys caught the ranger presentations that have probably recently posted. The first one being on the Lost Colony, and the second one being on recently freed men after the Battle of Roanoke Island. Till the next one, guys, I will see you later.